Hi, my name is Liz Hathaway and this is my astrological look, or my bird's eye view, shall we say, of 2021. Just want to say one thing about the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, which we just had on the solstice just over a week ago. It's really interesting, I think, that the famous French astrologer André Barbeau, he said that the Jupiter-Saturn cycle was connected to European history. And let's face it, European history was actually made on the day before Christmas last year, when the deal was made. The Brexit deal was finally completed. The whole business of the UK's exit from the UK was completed just shortly after this new Jupiter cycle, of Jupiter-Saturn cycle. I think that's really, that shows that Barbeau was absolutely right there. So the cycle that we're coming into now, the cycle that's going to be dominating 2021 is the Saturn-Uranus cycle. It's a 45-year cycle, and we're coming into the final square now between these two planets. A kind of tense relationship between them. If you look at the discovery chart for Uranus, you'll see that Saturn and Uranus are in opposition, so they're born into conflict with each other, really. It's that constant struggle between old ideas and new ideas, the old system and the new system. But it's kind of interesting, really, because they're almost in, you know, you should really have Uranus in Aquarius, right, and Saturn in Taurus. That would feel better, because we're used to thinking of Uranus in terms of him being the sort of, you know, rule breaker, him being the circuit breaker, him being the one that wants to, you know, do things completely differently and, you know, shake things up. But I mean, at the moment he's in Taurus, so his qualities are going to be expressing through a very earthy sign, a very conservative sign. You know, it's like, almost like the old way of doing things is very much Taurus, whereas Saturn now is traditionally linked as well to agriculture, an agricultural god. Here he is in this high-tech, you know, sort of sign Aquarius, which is really keen to innovate, research and development, that might even ruffle a few feathers, that might, you know, raise some philosophical or ethical questions. Aquarius is willing to go there, and Saturn in Aquarius is wanting to bring these outside ideas into the mainstream. So these are kind of, this is an interesting kind of square, 45-year cycle, the final square between these two. They're going to be, in terms of their cycles, so they're going to be square 3 times. They dominate the landscape of 2021. On the 7th of February, we have the first square, 7 degrees 13. On 15th of June, we have the second in 13 degrees 6 Aquarius as well, with Saturn retrograde. And then on Christmas Eve 2021, we have the final Saturn-Uranus square in 11 degrees 5 Aquarius, which is interestingly really close to the midpoint between the previous 2 squares in this current series of squares. So yeah, a lot of fixed energy around in 2021. So when will the peak crises be? They will be, of course, when we get major other players, faster moving cycles tying into Saturn-Uranus. So we're looking at peak periods when the Sun, of course, is in Taurus and the Sun is in Leo, Scorpio and Aquarius. Those times, because we know Venus and Mercury are going to be quite close always into the fixed signs at that time, at those times, because they're never far from the Sun, right? So there's going to be peak crises, I think, around those particular when the Sun is in those particular signs. A lot more fixed energy around, as I said. The problem with the fixed signs is they get entrenched. They get entrenched in an idea, or they can be blinded by their own standpoint. Each of these 2 big guys, Saturn, Uranus, opposite in their birth chart, right? So there could be one dominant idea and each party fighting for that. So the challenge, I think, both individually and collectively, is to remain flexible, to remember to bend, to remember to be a little bit more capable to change position in an argument and not get stuck on one theme or one thought. I mean, Christine Skinner calls the sort of fixed energy, if you're thinking in terms of punctuation, as the full stop. So we have to be careful of that. There's a lot of tension here, as I say, Taurus, Aquarius, this is old ideas, new ideas. A system in a way perhaps that is ill-equipped as well to deal with the transition. We're going through this transition to air. You particularly will see it, I think, in terms of money and payments. if we look at where I live in the Netherlands, cash as a currency is so passé, it's so on the way out. It's very difficult here actually to find a bank. Everything is online. We all pay with cards here, and a lot of places no longer even accept cash. They actually have signs up saying PIN only. So yeah, we're going to be looking at horoscopes as well that have a lot of planets in fixed signs. You know, we could look at the founding chart for the EEC. I use the 1st of January 1958 chart. There's a lot of fixed signs there. Also, if we look at the UK, there's also a lot of fixed energy, the Queen, Prince Charles. So anywhere, or also in terms of our clients, where we see an abundance of fixed signs, we have to sort of say to people, okay, these planets are playing into your chart right now, and that's going to make you want to be a bit more militant, going to make you want to, you know, dig your heels in a bit. But remember, it's transitory. This is a transiting thing. Try and stay supple, try and keep moving, try and be flexible. And you can do that literally by going out for a jog, actually shaking the body around a little bit, or whatever you do, you know, dance to some music or whatever, but keep moving, keep the flow going. So yeah, we can see certain themes coming through in certain major horoscopes. Chart we could look at, for example, is the one of the virtual currencies, Bitcoin. Bitcoin has Jupiter in the very last degree, in the anaretic degree, 29 degrees plus Capricorn. It was really interesting. It peaked just around the time that Jupiter was having his Jupiter return, and all these planets were hitting that final degree of Capricorn there. But it's you know, it's an interesting chart actually, the Bitcoin chart. So there, because you have that clash there between real currency, the old system of money, you know, in your hand, and the idea of this new currency. And actually the last, you know, there was a dot-com crisis. If we look at the dot-com crisis, which was the chart I'm using for that, is from the 10th of March 2000. You know, you see there that Saturn was square Uranus at that time. So it is what is real and what is possible, what might be, what isn't there yet. And then a sort of sudden feeling of being, you know, out on a limb and all up in the air, you know, and then, you know, the sort of oven opens and the souffle falls in. So I think those sorts of virtual currencies, Bitcoin, and currencies that are, you know, really new to us, they're going to be in the news. Another horoscope I think is going to be really playing into Saturn Uranus is the horoscope for the World Wide Web, right? It's having its Saturn return. And I hate to think in terms of policing the web, but we can certainly see that if we look at the chart for the World Wide Web, Sun in Leo, I mean, we're all kings or queens online, right? Square Pluto though. So there is that idea of the dark web, of, you know, money laundering, of all kinds of corners of the web where you and I do not go and do not want to go, but we need to shine a light on there. And I think we've seen it quite a bit this last year with Facebook being called up, and we've seen Facebook policing its site, its service in the last month. I've heard as well of people being, you know, sort of taken off. They're not allowed to go live for a month because they've said things. I think we're going to see a lot more of this as Saturn squares Uranus, this idea of, you know, what is allowed online in this this self-created web of ours. Yeah, so these are all big themes that are going to be, I think, coming up in 2021. We've also got, for example, you know, look at the full moons and new moons when they're falling in the fixed signs. I'll just give you one here because I don't want to make this too long, but look at the chart for the 11th of February 2021, for example, where we have 8 planets in fixed signs, 8 of the 10, and most of them are in Aquarius. We only have Mars in Taurus and Uranus in Taurus, and the rest are all in Aquarius. That's Saturn, Jupiter, Venus, Mercury, Sun, and the Moon. That is a whopping big lineup of planets in Aquarius. This is reminiscent of the charts for the 5th of February 1960. I can't read my own writing here. Is that 62 or 63? But then we had a massive lineup of planets in Aquarius then as well, which actually kind of fired up this whole idea of the age of Aquarius then, because, you know, the energy around that huge lineup in the early 60s, you know, it inspired Hair and the hit song The Age of Aquarius and so forth. So we're in this sort of major sort of Aquarius energy coming through now. If you want to hear me talk more about this is something I looked at in much more depth in the talk I just gave for the Cosmic Intelligence Agency, their solstice special. I'll put a link to that down below, and you can tune in and watch my presentation there. So a super year you're going to be wanting to look at, for example, Jupiter coming into Pisces there on the 13th of May. I mean, it's a short excursion into Pisces, it's only a few weeks, but still we start to see things loosening up in the spring, you know, once we get through to the, certainly post 13th of May, in June particularly, when we have a lot of planets in Gemini. So there will be movement in the summer, but if we think of COVID, for example, fixed doesn't make me particularly hopeful that there's going to be huge movement in people's standpoints, particularly with regard to that. We also want to look, of course, to the eclipses next year and to the full moons, because later on in the year we'll get the nodal shift, but then it moves into, particularly into the Taurus-Scorpio axis. So, you know, that will bring finance as well much more to the foreground. I think for a part of 2021, with all these planets fixed, I think we're still going to be dealing with COVID, with the fallout from it, trying to find a way, certainly in Europe and the UK, find a way through, you know, the New Deal, how that manifests on the ground. So there's plenty of work to be done. But I think the major thing this year is to try and keep some flow in it, to try and keep on moving, as we say. All of these dates, I'm going to put some particular ones down below. I'll put the eclipse dates in, for example, in the degrees and some things like that. But yeah, I mean, interesting. Look at that chart for the 11th of February 2021, because I think that's a whopping chart if we want to think about the future and look where Aquarius is in your own chart and play around with that. Anyway, I hope you're all well. I hope you had a great Christmas. I wish everybody a stupendous 2021. Thank you for listening. Lots of love. Bye.